Hello, everyone. Geeta here. I am the founder of Baby Got Booked, which is a do-it-yourself program that is designed to help you take your genius out into the world without having to create your audience from scratch. Because the number one biggest issue that most of us face in our businesses is that when you start your business, you basically are forced to create hi guys, say hi if you're here. I would love to see who is here, who's playing. I really want to see. There's Barbara, hello, and Haviland. Basically, your number one issue when you have a business is how the heck do you get out there in front of the people that you were put there to serve? Hi, Mel. And so the way that most people are taught to do it is get out there on social media. Hey, Miriam, get out there on social media, get out there and, start doing lives. How many of you here are active on social media for your business, right? Put that in the comment. I'll be like, yeah, I'm active. How many of you are absolutely thrilled with the organic reach that you're getting? Put that in the comments too. Typically, I'll see a whole, when I speak and I ask this question, I see a whole bunch of hands go up and they're like, oh my God, yeah, I'm totally active. And hi, Justin. But it's like the energy just goes down when I ask people how thrilled they are with the sales that they're making from all of the energy, the time, the resources that they're putting towards creating content for social, right? Because it is so freaking frustrating to put this much content out there and put hour after unpaid hour into creating this content when you're not getting return on your investment. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is, of course, with paid advertising, and that can be effective. But for most people, and tell me if this has been your experience. How many of you have done paid advertising for your business where you put your message out there and it's like, you might as well just be taking $50 bills and setting them on fire, because that is the kind of energy that that there's all this testing and tweaking, and then you're told, hey Katie, you're told, oh my God, you have to wait 7 days for it to optimize. You give it some time. We have to test. We have to tweak. Did you know this? 75%, hi Danny, I know, right? 75% of all ads fail. So the next time you are calculating your ad spend, just know that 75% of all ads, especially on Facebook, fail. They don't actually lead to anything. You don't get any positive return on investment. And so I would like to propose that instead of trying to build your reach one by one by one, either organically where you're like, hey mom, hey friends, like my page, right? We've all been there. I've totally done that. Unfortunately, mom and your friends are not buyers, right? So if you want to get in front of buyers, then you do the ad thing. And that is like hit or miss and kind of expensive. And you get you get cold leads one by one by one. And then you're taught to make this huge funnel that is meant to warm them up, right? That is the whole purpose of the funnel, is to warm up the cold lead that you've had to spend that much money to acquire. So I would like to propose a third option, and this is something that most people just don't really consider and don't know how to accomplish. Thanks you guys for coming. Hi, Candice. So the third option is to get in front of audiences that somebody else has paid the money to acquire, to engage, and what you want to be doing is aligning your content with what their audience craves and what the purpose of that podcast is. Hey, Stephen, we're going to be talking about you in just a second. So Stephen is one of our clients. So is Candice. So is Katie. There's lots of clients here. Yay. So basically what I want to teach you today is basically somebody else pays the money to build their funnel, to acquire the audience, and to engage and nurture them actively, because this is a very time-consuming process. If you've been trying to get out there on social, you know that it's very, very time-consuming to put out quality content. Now, there are a lot of people out there, i.e. podcasters, who are out there and have created and nurtured these audiences. And what's really powerful, you guys, is that this is an incredible opportunity for you. If you haven't already downloaded the workbook that goes with this live, I highly recommend you go and check it out in the comments. Pat, can you just pop the workbook link in the comments, and you can go in and you can download it right away, print it out if you have time. take notes or come back and listen to this live after with your workbook and make sure you take notes, because I want to make sure that you turn this knowledge into action, because otherwise nothing is going to happen. Okay? All right. So the number one thing that I want you to do is I want you to think about podcasts. And the reason I want you to think about podcasts is because in today's climate, and I'm going to pull up some stats here, in today's climate, podcasts are actually going to make you more sales. Get this, they're going to make you more sales than you would get from having media exposure on Good Morning America or even Forbes. Does anybody want to guess why? There you go. There, Pat has popped the link to the workbook in the comments. So if you haven't already gotten it, please do so. I want you to know that the reason that podcasts are so powerful is because, my friends, podcasts are micro niches. All right. So a podcast typically is not a wide general show. A podcast is typically a bunch of people who are rabidly interested in a very niche topic. It could be health, it could be wealth, it could be business, it could be whatever. But they're really, really excited about this topic. They tend to be rabid listeners. 45% of monthly podcast listeners, and this is a real stat, that's from Nielsen, and it's a 2017. These are all 2017 or 2018 stats. These are the latest stats out there in the market. 45% of monthly podcast listeners have a household income of over $75,000. 16 million people in the US are avid podcast fans, and 73 million people in the US alone, so these are all US numbers, actually listen to podcasts at least every month. How many of you here listen to podcasts yourself? Can you put just pop one of your favorite podcasts in the comments section. So I want to be able to see what you guys are listening to. And now I'm going to teach you how to turn your love for that podcast into clients and cash flow. Who is with me? Who's excited for this? So what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what podcasts you're listening to, especially if these are podcasts that speak. Yes, of course, Stephen is talking about the hit show. Stephen, you're not listening to that show. You're on that show. You're the host of that show. That's not the same thing. Although Stephen is a fabulous podcaster, and you should absolutely get to know him. So first of all, you did a very, 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 very smart thing by showing up live here today. You know why? Because some of the people in this chat thread are people who have podcasts, and you can get on their shows. But before you pitch them, I want to teach you how to do it effectively in a way that's actually going to lead to you generating value for them and the podcast generating sales for you. And just getting on a podcast is not the way to do it, because that is what most people do, and that is why it doesn't work. So here's the number one thing. First of all, podcasts have people that are very, very engaged. They're really rabidly interested in the topic that they listen to. They tend to binge listen. It's a lot like Netflix. So they get very, very steeped in the topic, in the subject. Now, a lot of them are very attached and become very, very loyal to, there you go, Stu McLaren. Rachel Oliver was just interviewed on a podcast. There you go. So a lot of people get very attached to the hosts, right? So one of the big things when you, especially in the premium space, when you want to close multi-thousands of dollars, when your programs and consulting and whatever you do, whatever you sell is worth a lot, is you want to have credibility. You want your audience to know that you're the real deal. And so one of the most powerful ways that you can do this is to borrow credibility from a podcast host. All right. And the way that you do that is because the listeners are very, very loyal to think about how you feel about your favorite podcasters, right? Patrice Washington, or, you guys, you're so sweet. Exactly, Rachel. You should have had the advice sooner, because then you'd be able to turn it into actual sales. And Stephen is popping here. Let me see if I can pull this comment on there. There you go. If you're not prepared, you will get nothing out of it. That's what Stephen is saying. I was on 30 podcasts and never sold anything. Geeta will tell you a story of how she coached me for 30 minutes, and Stephen made $40,000 off of that coaching, because he got on John Lee Dumas's podcast, and he got two $20,000 consulting clients out of that 30-minute interview that he did with John Lee Dumas. Stephen, you want to pop in the comments what John Lee Dumas said about, and John Lee Dumas has been putting out a daily, like 7 days a week. He's been putting out a daily podcast since 2014, I think. Like, it's a crazy long time. And he said that, I know, right? It's that $40,000 like that. And he said that Stephen was one of the best interviews he'd ever done. Why was that? Now, Stephen was going to go onto that show and tell a very different set of stories. And this is the big mistake that I see a lot of people making. Often when you want to get on a podcast, especially like a big, important kind of podcast, you tend to want to blow up your own importance, right? That's what tends to happen. And people want to say, oh my God, I'm so important. I have all this credibility and blah, blah, blah. And what that does is it can put the podcaster off. It often puts the audience off. In Stephen's case, I want to tell you, like, Stephen, if you don't mind me sharing, I'm going to tell you, I would like to share what the mistake was that Stephen was going to make. And so you can make sure that you don't make it either. In the workbook, there is step 1, and I share with you, write out what you do this way. And so this is a fill in the blank exercise. If you haven't got the workbook, look in the comments. Pat has posted a link. Patrice has posted a link. And here's how you can say it. I help X, and you say your target audience, do whatever it is that you help them do, even if they fill in the blank with what that is. Now, Katie, who's another of our clients, would say, you could say my product helps so-and-so target audience do blah, blah, blah without blah, blah, blah. So Katie is an expert who helps women who are binge eaters lose weight and heal their relationship with food without dieting or over-exercising. So you see how she's able to very, very succinctly in one sentence say what it is she does that makes her super different. She's not like your typical weight loss guru at all. She serves a very specific niche audience. If you just ate a little extra cake at Christmas and you've gained 5 pounds, Katie's not for you. But if you eat to the point where you have eaten $5,000 worth of junk food in a month and you have to lie down to get your pants on, then Katie can help you. That is what she does, all right? So that's the power of knowing with clarity what it is you actually do. So I've put the link up. It's babygodbook.com/podcast, and you'll get the workbook that goes with this. Now, what I want you to do is fill in the blanks and make sure that you are clear about how to articulate your value. This is just the beginning. This is step 1. This is actually step -1. It's like the prequel to what it is you want to do. Now, the thing that Stephen struggled with is that Stephen he's a gorgeous guy. He's tall, he's buff, he's former military. He has all these accolades to his name. He's this very, very, very successful consultant who's worked with celebrities and been, a bodyguard to rock stars and that sort of thing. And the problem is that Stephen has this message of honesty, integrity, and transparency. Okay, this is very sexy. I have to say, it's amazing and it makes you feel fabulous, but it's really easy to be honest and in integrity and in full transparency when you're bloody amazing like Stephen is, right? That's the problem, is that everyone's like, well, great, Stephen, shit, if I looked like you and if I acted like you and if I had your brilliant accolades and if I had been, a rock star's bodyguard, then for sure I would be super transparent. But unfortunately, I'm just me. And what the hell am I supposed to do with that? Do you see? And so what was happening is that Stephen was killing his sales because he was coming across as so completely unreachable and unattainable that nobody could relate to him. So where I want you to go when you're pitching a podcast is there is an intersection and your happy place and all the money lives at this intersection. You ready for this? Get out your pencils and write this in your workbook. The money lives at the intersection of who you are, and you need to be able to articulate that brilliantly, and this is what we teach in our program, who you are. This is custom to each of you, all right? Right? It's like, this is custom to each of you. The workbook link is on the screen. Make sure you get it and come back and listen to this if you're listening to the replay and fill this out. Who you are and how your expertise or your product or your program or your service helps the audience. Do you get that? Who you are, which is the human being that you are. This is about your energy. This is about that integrity. This is about that transparency. This is about the authenticity of who the frick it is you are and what you stand for. Because people buy with emotion. They want to buy from people that they love. They want to buy for people whose values align with their own. It's not just about a product, okay? It's not just about a service. It's not just even about customer testimonials, because again, people are going to be thinking, well, yeah, it's easy for you to get them those results, or maybe you got yourself these results, but there's a part of me that doesn't really believe it's going to work for me. Okay? And when you're able to tell a powerful story that helps your audience feel you and relate to you, and then you can hook that into your expertise and share with them ideas for how this applies to them, that is when it leads to people picking up the phone and finding you on the internet and wanting to work with you the way that Stephen experienced. All right. So here's Stephen saying, mind you, Geeta had to tell me this to my face. It's true. I was like, you know what, Stephen, don't come across as as this like shiny, overly accomplished person, because no one can relate. And it's funny because we often do that. The people who do it the most, and I'll tell you this I've been a journalist since I was 12 years old. So I have more than 27 years of experience in this field. I have made booking decisions. I have brought people like you into big newsrooms. I have put them on national television. I have put them on national radio. I have interviewed them. I have shopped them around the newsroom. I have shared their contact information with my journalism buddies and podcasters now, and and influencers in general. And what I will tell you is this: the people who often come across as unattainable, the people who are like, oh, like you're so shiny, like I just can't relate to you, are often the people who are the most insecure. They're often the people who you can't really feel them because they've covered them, they've like put on this like shiny suit with their the industry awards that they've won, and the college that they went to, and all of the stuff that they've done in their life. And that's usually what people pitch. They're like, hey, look at me, I'm so important because I have all of these credentials. That is the wrong way to pitch credibility. Okay? Because again, where your credibility and where the money and where the impact and connection lies is when you can connect who you are with what it is you do and how that benefits the audience. And you actually want to start with the second piece. You want to start with how it benefits the audience. And then once I'm super excited and I'm like, oh, I want to give my audience this, I want my audience to have this, then that's when you're able to, that's when it becomes important who you are. Are you the right person for the job? So a lot of the times, especially with mainstream media, but this is true for podcasting as well, people will send out a pitch and be like, hey, I've written so-and-so book and it's a bestseller on Amazon, and I have this and I have that and I've done this and I've done that. And there's like this wall of text about all of the things that they have done in their life and who they are and how important they are and whatnot. And I'm like, delete. Who is this person? Like, I don't even care. I used to have a podcast and I got pitched all the time, and it was all of this crap. And I used to just delete it because I'm like, I don't actually care who you are until I understand what is the story and how is it valuable to my audience. That is what I want to know. All right. So if you go on and if you scroll down in your workbook, one of the things that I want you to do, so as we sort of work this out, I want you to get crystal clear about your intention. And I want you to be super duper honest, okay? So I want you to put right now in the comments, if you're watching this, and even if you're watching the replay, write it down, because writing it down has been proven scientifically to actually shift the way that your neurons work, where it becomes more real. Everything that you write down actually becomes more real. So if it's a negative emotion, it actually gets discharged. The energy of it gets discharged. And if it's something positive that you want to have as a goal, then writing it down makes it much more likely to become a reality. So in the chat right now, I want you to state your intention and write out the names of 2 podcasts that you want to get on. Now, I want to wait before you write anything. Not, it's too early. You don't want to write this yet. I want you to stop and think about why you're picking the podcasts that you're picking. Now, too often people will pick a podcast just because they're like, well, I listen to it all the time and I really love the interviews and I love the interviewer and I just want to be on that show. Nothing wrong with that. But if your intention is sales, if your intention is growing your business, then you have to be very brutally honest and ask yourself, is this audience aligned with your message? is this an audience of people who are rabidly interested in your topic? If the answer to that is no, or if the answer to that is I don't know, then I would hesitate to put this on your list. Does that make sense? Tell me if this is resonating for you. So tell me, so Danny, what do you not care about? What do you not care? So, right? It's like, I want to make sure that you pitch the right podcast. Now, I want you to think about who it is you serve. Most people, and this is why when we do Baby Got Booked, Module 1, this is all Module 1 stuff, we get deep, deep, deep into your psychology because you cannot beat other people, other experts at their own game. And that's what I see too many people doing. And then your pitch is going to look like everybody else's and you're going to get a podcaster's delete finger. Instead, what I'd like you to do is to move more deeply into your own message. All right. You want to move more deeply. Oh, I see what you mean, Danny. It's like, I don't care who you are unless you tell me what you do for my audience. Absolutely right. Damn straight. That's exactly right. So if I don't listen to podcasts, where do I find them? Oh my goodness, Julie, you are missing out. You want to go to iTunes. You want to go to what is it? Libsyn. Libsyn will get you podcasts. iTunes, Stitcher. Stitcher is a good place. But think about your favorite influencers in your industry. Many of them will have their own podcasts, and you actually want to get on the podcast of an influencer who may actually be a competitor of yours. And that can be a really great place to pick up leads that they have spent all this money and time pre-educating about the value of what you do. And then you show up and you're so different and so you and so authentic. Again, it's what you do and who you are. It's the intersection of those two things. That is what is going to get people to be like, who is this person? Let me Google them. Let me get on a call with them. Let me work with them. All right. Google Play. That's what Sherry Ann says. So Steven says, I'm going to be on Grant Cardone and Joe Rogan next. And he is being prepped by many contacts. See, there you go. There you go. So, thank you, Stephen. So Grant Cardone has millions of subscribers who have spent a lot of money with him. Something else you need to know about podcasters, my friends, and you want to write this down in your workbooks, is that unlike mainstream media, a lot of podcasters are in fact entrepreneurs themselves, which means they understand the value of joint ventures. They understand the value of affiliate programs. And so oftentimes, unlike the mainstream media, so here are a couple of really key differences when it comes to podcasts and mainstream media. On mainstream media, often the rules are very, very strict. You're not allowed to say your website. You're not allowed to promote your product. You're not allowed to sell in any overt kind of way. Now, on a lot of podcasts, you're not allowed to sell in a like sleazy, slimy way. And by the way, I don't think you should ever do that anyhow because it doesn't work, right? Nobody wants to be sold to in a slimy way. But if you know how to position yourself, and again, this is stuff that we help you to customize this for yourself because one formula does not fit all. Just as your personality, your energy, your topic, the way that you approach your topic, the way that you have chemistry with the podcaster, none of these things are the same for any of you who are in the chat right now. You need to be able to customize this for yourself. So the thing that is different about podcasts is one, you may not be allowed to sell in an overt way, but almost every podcast that I have ever listened to that has a guest will invite you to share either a lead magnet of some kind, your website, your social handles. They always say, how can people get in touch with you? They are aware that that is the payoff for you being on the program, right? And this is exactly right. So Stephen brings up a really good point. JLD, who is John Lee Dumas, who has Entrepreneur on Fire, the very podcast that I've gotten booked on. John Lee Dumas said that I was one of the two people that he's ever booked in the history of his show that didn't go through his screening process. I was just somebody who pitched him, and based on the strength of my pitch alone, he'd never heard of me, couldn't pronounce my name. Nobody can. He just booked me on his podcast and he was like, how the heck? And the very first thing, you should go and find it. Find Entrepreneur on Fire, Google my name and Entrepreneur on Fire, and you will hear that podcast. And the very first thing I do is I challenge him on something that he does. And no one had ever done that before. And you know what? To this day, I make sales from people who have listened to that podcast and who resonated with me and started following me and got on my email list and have been buying from me ever since. I have made at least $130,000 directly. That was in the first 12 months of being on that podcast. It was a couple of years ago, directly related to that podcast. And Stephen has made $40,000 within a week or so of that podcast going live. And as he's saying, John Lee Dumas makes $120,000 to $200,000 a month with affiliate sales. And what this basically means is that if you have a product or a program that you're selling and you go on his show, you can work out a deal with him where he will deliberately position you and promote you to his audience of rabid followers who love him, who worship him, and who will do pretty much what he says because they trust him. They trust him. And again, I don't in any way mean to disparage John Lee Dumas. Quite the contrary. He won't promote you if he doesn't believe in you. He won't promote your stuff if he believes that you're anything less than the absolute best for his audience. But if you can convince him that you're the real deal, and you can't do that by playing somebody else's game, then some of that money is going to be yours. In fact, most of that money is going to be yours. All right, because he has a very, very engaged audience of buyers. And that is what you want to get in front of. All right, so, you're so nice. There, Stephen has actually put up the link. So it's in the comments if you're watching this later, but you can actually find the podcast interview that I did with John Lee Dumas back in the day. This is like really early on. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And one of the reasons it was so much fun and one of the reasons that it has been so profitable for us is because I lived in that intersection of who I am, how I show up, what I stand for, my energy with what it is I do and how that serves the audience. Now, the other thing about, so the two things about podcasts that make them different from mainstream media is that one, they let you promote yourself. Two, they often have a vested interest in helping you promote. All right. So they will, in fact, often ask you questions that will help the audience truly understand your value. So again, somebody like Stephen, who is really, really good at what you do. How many of you are really confident in what you do? You think you're like, I'm like, yes, if somebody were to ask me deep questions about what I do, I think that would be a huge value. You know, I know that Julie, for example, you talk about financial planning and you're somebody who helps people build actual sustainable long-term wealth, even if they start with very little money. Not every financial planner knows how to do that. And most financial planners, quite frankly, are being compensated by the industry and sell things based on the commissions that they make rather than the well-being of the client. And you understand that. So Julie, in your case, especially the way that I would position you is I would give the host a list of questions that they should ask, controversial questions, investigative questions, because you are going to be able to answer them in a way that a lot of other financial or wealth planners will kind of want to back away from because they're like, oh, that's a bit of an uncomfortable question. I don't actually want to go there. But you can go there because you have that integrity and that allows you to shine a light on who it is you are and what you stand for. Does that make sense? So one of the things that I want you to write out in your workbook, and I have this actually as a fill in the blank in your workbook, is I want you to state your intention. I want to know how much money you would like to make every single month being on other people's podcasts. Put it down, write it out, set your intention. And now I want you to take that number. Is anybody brave enough to share that number in the comments? Go ahead and share it because fortune favors the bold, friends. And I want you to share in the comments what your intention is. How much would you like to make every month? It can be a fraction of the overall income that you want to make, but what is it that you would like to make as a benchmark to say, wow, this podcasting is really working? Is it $5,000? Is it $2,000? Is it $20,000? What is it? 10K. Okay, good for you, Sherry-Ann. So Sherry-Ann would like to make $10,000 a month selling on other people's podcasts. All right, great. So what I want you to do is I want you to now think about whatever the number it is that you've put down for yourself. I want you to think about what that number represents to you. What will you do with that money? What does that money actually buy you? All right. See, Katie wants to make, here we go. Katie wants to make $30,000. Is that a month? Woohoo! Yay, Katie. I love it. So if you want to make $30,000 a month tapping into other people's audiences, I want you to sit down and I want you to write at least 10 things that money is going to buy you. It doesn't have to be physical objects. It could be freedom. It could be time. It could be well-being. It could be appointments with, osteopaths or physiotherapists. It could be time to go and train for a big race. It could be experiences. It could be a car. It could be a home. It could be whatever it is. And I'll tell you why this is so important. And this is a mistake that everybody makes, is everybody gets all head up in the steps of it, right? It's like the strategy all the time. People get really head up in the steps. And what tends to happen with that is that when things get challenging, when you send out a bunch of pitches to podcasters and either you don't hear back or you hear a no or you hear this or you hear that, you're like, oh, this isn't working. And then you quit. And I can tell you this. If anybody, see, Sherry-Ann wants to get a personal chef. Yes, Sherry-Ann, it is absolutely worth getting a personal chef, by the way. We have somebody who cooks for us, and it is all of the things. It is everything you think it's going to be. It's amazing. And I will say this is when you know what that money represents, it is almost impossible. And there are studies that prove this. And I've gotten coaching from some 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs who all say this, by the way, and they use it in the context of building team culture. But I want you to know that this applies to you too. Often people will put a number on their vision board and they'll just put a number on there. It's like, I want to make 100K a month. I want to make 30K a month, whatever it is. And then that number is just a number. It's an abstract thing. What the hell does it even mean? It's just a number. It's some squiggly lines. You've never actually made that kind of money. You don't know what it's like to have that kind of money. And then when you're motivated, when you hit an obstacle, when you hit kind of a bump in the road, there is no energy behind that number. So what I want you to do is to not make that mistake. Okay? I want you to know what that number represents concretely in your life. What are the experiences that you want to buy? What is the power that it's going to give you? I want you to write it down. You can put it in the comments like Sherry-Ann just did. That's amazing. I would like to see more of you tell me what you'd like to spend at least some of that money on. And I want you to put it in your workbooks. You don't have to share this with anybody if you don't want to. I don't care. But you should care, because if you don't do this one step, I can promise you, everybody who does this step at the end of next year, they're going to have made that money. They're going to be much, much closer to those income goals. That's for sure. Because you know why? Because they're going to keep pitching. They're going to tweak their pitch. They're going to find their sweet spot. They're going to hire coaches to help them get to that number. They're going to get the help that they need, and they're going to get the clarity that they need, and they're never going to stop. Because when your goal is juicy enough, there you go. Danny Simone is going to get a housekeeper. Candace is going to make 10K. That's fantastic. When your goal is juicy enough and concrete enough and meaningful to you, because, some people want to buy a flashy car. Like, that totally does not appeal to me. I don't even own a car. I don't even have a driver's license right now. I do want to fix that. But the fact of the matter is, I'm never going to be motivated by a car. It's just not going to do anything. It doesn't do anything for me. I just need to get from point A to point B in a comfortable and safe manner. So that's never going to resonate for me. But I have other experiences that I want to run this 100-mile race. That's going to require a huge amount of time that needs to be freed up to do the running. It's going to require going there. It's going to require, airfare and training and physiotherapy and blah, 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 blah. There's all of those things. Mostly it's the time that I need to free up. So when I set my goal, that is what I'm going to put down. And so every time I'm tempted to bail, every time I'm tempted to quit, every time I'm going to let somebody else's know because they didn't understand the value of what I put in front of them, if I'm going to let them make that decision, the way that, luckily J.K. Rowling didn't let some stupid publisher, many of the stupid publishers who rejected her before Harry Potter finally got picked up. Think about how much those publishers are kicking themselves right now. But the reason they're kicking themselves right now is because J.K. Rowling didn't take no for an answer. Okay? And the reason she didn't take no for an answer was because she had a really compelling why. She knew what she needed to do. And that's why you need to know why you want this income, why you want to create this impact, how many people's lives you want to touch. It's all of those things together. And Rachel says, you can give up on the money as a target, but you won't give up if your family or kids are part of your why. If there's a why, there is a way. Exactly. You totally get it. Which is why I hope everybody has gone and put your why. whatever it is you want to accomplish by pitching these podcasts, the money that you want to make, the impact that you want to have, the lifestyle that you want to build, I want you to write it down and I want you to commit to it. All right. And then I want you to start thinking about, and this is the final piece of the podcast workbook, is I want you to start thinking about 15, at least 15. You can go crazy and go as far as 100. But at least 15 to start. I want to keep this manageable because if you just make this an endless task, you're never actually going to do it. The doing part is the scary part, right? So I want you to make a list of 15 podcasts that your ideal clients listen to. How many of you know what some of those podcasts might be? How many of you know what your ideal clients are actually listening to that are affecting their buying decisions right now? So tell me in the comments, how many of you know? Say, yep, I can think of some, pop a podcast suggestion in the comments. So tell us what you do and tell us what a podcast might be that your clients listen to. A lot of people, see, if you're stuck with this step, now you'll understand why this is where people mess up. People don't have clarity on this and they just start pitching willy-nilly and they just get out there and they just put out anything, and sometimes the audience is not aligned, and sometimes, they'll get rejected because they were never the right fit to begin with. They don't have the value that this particular audience craves. The audience is not crazy about that subject, whatever that is. If, on the other hand, you know that this audience is like, okay, there's an audience that is all around frugal living, for example. And then Julie, who is a financial advisor, can pitch this audience knowing that this audience is all about saving money. And she's going to go in there and be like, look, everybody wants to save money. And it's so interesting, right? Because she can go in there and have a really controversial sort of interesting take, which is, everybody wants to go and save money, but here's the thing, that is not the way that you're going to build wealth. And saving money is not the same as building wealth. And here's the difference. And then she can go and explain all of that. Does that make sense? Do you see how that would be a really compelling pitch? That's a pitch that's going to get the attention of the host and be like, oh my gosh, that's totally true. Everybody's so busy saving money, but that may not be the right way to build wealth. What is the right way to build wealth? We need to get Julie on to talk about it. And then Julie is going to get some calls out of this podcast because she has such an interesting, deep rather than wide and superficial. That's what I see a lot of people make this mistake, and they make for very, very boring podcast interviews. Is imagine you have 30 to 45 minutes for people to fall in love with you, to get to know just how deep your expertise runs, right? You want to use that. That is prime real estate. I will tell you this. I can't tell you the number of times people go to my website or sign up for one of my master classes or, find me somehow on the internet, and then they'll Google me. They'll find my column on Inc. They'll find my column on Entrepreneur. They'll find all this press stuff that I've done. They'll find podcast episodes. How many of you who are my clients now have listened to me on a podcast episode and been like, I like this woman. I want to know more about her. And then by the time they show up to a sales call, they're pre-sold. I don't have to work very hard at all. The selling is already done. And that is the benefit of learning how to pitch podcasts and how to tell the right stories on those podcasts. So Anya says, I don't know how to be, which podcasts to put on there. A really simple thing to do, Anya, is to start talking to your ideal clients. And again, this is Baby Got Booked Module 1, and I know you're a customer, so you definitely want to go to Baby Got Booked, go into Module 1. There's an entire list of questions that we actually have for you in there that's going to help make this process a no-brainer. Because if you're guessing at this part, you're building your empire on an extremely shaky foundation. You don't want to leave this piece to guesswork. And I want to say this, and this is really important, so I'm going to take a deep breath. I hope you're listening. If you're not crystal clear on what makes you different, what is the value that you bring to your audience that makes you really different from everybody in your space, if you're not crystal clear on exactly who you serve that is willing to pay for what you've got, if you're not crystal clear on what media they're consuming, because everybody making buying decisions is consuming some kind of media out there, if you're not crystal clear on any of these pieces, that is the source of your cash flow problems. This exercise is just putting it out there. It's actually helping you see it kind of naked and the unvarnished truth. And you need to solve this. And I will tell you this from having coached hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs to tell stories through the PR piece and through our Impact with Influence program. I will say this: most people who are struggling think they have these things figured out, but actually don't. And that is why they're struggling. They're telling the right story to the wrong people, or they're telling the wrong story to the right people. There's a disconnect there, and or they're staying on the surface. And a lot of that has to do with you not having the courage to fully show up as who you are. Okay? If you're going to be somebody truly different, if you're going to be somebody who truly is an agent of change, if you're going to be somebody who is an innovator and a disruptor, and I'm sure that everybody who's listening right now, you identify that way. How many of you identify as somebody who really wants to be an innovator and a disruptor in your field? But say me, I'm an innovator, I'm a disruptor. Put that in the chat, okay? Say it, own it. Because when you don't own it, I'll tell you what happens. You stop trusting your intuition. You stop trusting your inner voice. This is why we work with clients in Impact with Influence. We work with clients with an actual hypnotherapist on staff to help build self-trust. You cannot be a disruptor if you don't deeply trust yourself. Because for sure, all the gurus out there, all the industry bigwigs and whatnot, all those people who follow the status quo, they're all going to have a formula for how things work. And guess what? You're different. And this difference that you've always, probably as a child, even experienced as something of a negative, this difference that makes you kind of stand out and be uncomfortable, this difference that kind of puts you out there, that you're like, I kind of wish I was like everyone else. I wish I was like the popular girls. That's your gift. And too many of us ignore it. Too many of us hide it. Too many of us don't put it front and center in our messaging. And it costs us, because what we end up doing is we end up telling a kind of watered down version of somebody else's story. We end up showing up as a kind of like watered down version of ourselves. That doesn't make for a very interesting podcast interview. It doesn't compel people to be like, let me find out how to spell Nadkarni. Like, that's my challenge, right? Nobody can ever spell my name. And yet people will find me on the internet and book calls to talk to me and get help to do this. What makes people do that? It's that intersection of who I am and the expertise that I bring, because I can help you tap into the most deep layer of yourself, the place where who you are lives. This is exactly what we did with Stephen. This is why he stopped hiding behind his medals. He stopped hiding behind the accolades and his accomplishments. I was like, no, Stephen, you got to show up as who you are. And you got to tell the story of who you are and how this audience can relate to you. And then you tell them how you use who you are to serve them. That's when people are going to trip all over themselves to pick up the phone, to find out who you are. That's when they're going to open your emails when you send them. Because that's where people buy from. That's what people want more of, right? There you go. Candace is a disruptor. Julie's a disruptor. So is Patricia. Awesome. Mary Ryan, fantastic, right? Katie's always been a black sheep. And Katie was saying, how many episodes? You listen to all the Baby Got Booked podcast episodes. By the way, I have a podcast out there, which is called Baby Got Booked. And I interviewed people that, I used to beg to have access to back in the day when I was a freelance journalist. I was like, oh my God, what would happen if I could sit the editor-in-chief of Inc. magazine down and ask him exactly what his team looks for in a pitch? Well, guess what? I did it. And I put it out there, and it's free. And I literally hold him down and get him to tell us exactly how they make their decisions. It is exactly the information that I've used to land my own columns in Inc., in Entrepreneur, and so on and so on, Huffington Post, and so on and so forth. All right. And this information is out there. If you want to get to know me a little bit better, then that's a really good place to start as well. That's the Baby Got Booked podcast. I want to remind you, folks, that if you haven't already downloaded the workbook, please do. Make sure to fill it out and make sure that you come back and listen to this again and take notes, because I can promise you've missed things the first round that you were just not ready to hear yet, but you will be able to hear when the dust is settled, when you filled out some of the workbook questions, and you can come back and be like, oh, there's a deeper layer here that's available to me. Repeat after me. You are not going to get to live the life of your dreams by going wide and superficial. It's not going to work. Then you just become part of the noise. You are going to build the life that you have always wanted by going deep into who you are and what you truly want. Okay? And that is where all of your messaging is going to come from. And that is what is going to make you a magnet to those who most need you in this world, who are most willing to pay for what it is you offer, and who want to work with you, who see the value of what it is you do. So if you want to stop hustling and running after clients and you want to make them come to you, this is the work that you need to do. The message comes from this deep place. It comes from that self-trust, and it comes from getting clarity about the true value of what it is you actually do, which is different from what everybody else out there is doing. So for example, Katie, who's in the comments here, she helps women who are binge eaters heal their relationship with food without diet or exercise or over-exercising. Okay? That's much clearer than I help people lose weight. I'm a nutrition coach. I'm a diet coach. She's not any of those things. And that's the thing. If she tried to put herself in that box, it wouldn't work. First of all, she would become a nameless, faceless part of the noise. And she would end up with clients who really are just not the right fit for her, quite frankly, because the deep work that she does is on a spiritual level. It is not on a physical level. And so the healing that occurs is much deeper than what your typical exercise program or weight loss program is ever going to do for anybody. And she would have been hiding her light, and would have cost her sales, and would have cost her ideal clients because they didn't know who she was. She was wearing a dress that made her unrecognizable, if that makes any sense, as a metaphor. Does that make sense? Right? So Katie says, I listened to all episodes of the Baby Got Booked podcast in 1 week. And was that instrumental in you becoming a client, Katie? Did that help you get to know me better before you even booked a call? Did that help you make the decision to book that call in the first place? How many coaches have you checked out online before you made the decision to work with me? Right? This is the difference. And this is what I'm trying to tell you folks, is that you don't have to get on Good Morning America. You don't have to get on TV. You can, and it helps. And different types of media will do different things. And that reminds me, you want to make sure that you like my Geeta Nadkarni public page. So find my Facebook page. It's where this live is happening. Make sure that you like this page, because I'm going to be back on Thursday doing another live that's going to teach you how to become a featured expert. And I see Manon pop into the chat box here. And I'm actually going to tell a story of how Manon got herself her very first TV column. I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that, how to pitch yourself to local television, how to pitch yourself to newspapers, how to become a featured expert, how to get your own column in Inc. or Entrepreneur if that's something that you want to do. How many of you would be interested in that? Let me know. Let me know in the comments if this is something that's of interest to you. Share this with your friends. If you know an entrepreneur, if you know somebody who has a business or is trying to get a business off the ground and is frustrated with all the work, all the unpaid hours that they're required to put into social media and tweeting and this and doing endless lives where they're like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. It's not leading to anything. If they would like a better way to get in front of their ideal clients, to really clean up their messages and to say what they do in a way that really resonates for the people that they serve, then you want to share that live with them. Tag them in the comments here so that they can come here and listen to this as well, and then they can be notified of the next live that I do. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take some. So just type as fast as you can. Type your questions into the comments, and I'll see if I can answer a few questions real quick before it's time for us to wrap. So Patricia, yes, for sure. So awesome. I see loads of you are interested in how to become a featured expert, because the way that we teach it, again, you have to remember, I grew up in newsrooms in multiple countries. I've worked in India, in Singapore, in the UK, and in North America. And I have freelanced my entire life since I was 12 years old. I'll be 39 in a couple of weeks. And I will say this, when you know how these decisions, how these booking decisions are made on the inside, it's really not rocket science to pitch yourself and get accepted. We have so many hundreds literally of success stories of people just like you who had never pitched the press before, had zero contacts, were relatively new to their space, who landed their own columns that they write to this day with their byline and their photo and backlinks to their site in Entrepreneur Magazine and Inc. Magazine. They got featured in Forbes, they got featured in Fast Company, they were on CBC and CNN and BBC and just you name it, and they've done it. New York Times, you name it, they've done it. So if I can teach all of these people how to do this, it has everything to do, again, with some of the principles that I've taught you in this particular live. Again, go back and listen to it. Print out the workbook. Take notes. When I tell you to stop and take notes, actually do it. The people who do this work are the people who are going to be in a completely different place in 2019. If you want 2019 to be the year where you hit the ground running and you have the best year that you've had yet, and it just blows your mind open to the possibilities, then you need to actually implement what I've taught you today. All right. And make sure that you sign up to be notified. If you're not already on my email list, then, signing up for downloading this workbook will help put you on there. And I will send you, I have a whole bunch of free stuff that I'm putting out to help you hit the ground running for 2019, so that while everybody else is in holiday mode and partying, you're going to have everything prepped, and it's going to be super simple and super easy so that you can get the word out and start your year abundantly. Yay, that's fantastic. So Rachel says, if I serve Canadians who want to create more cash flow, should I only stick to Canadian podcasts? Yes, actually, Rachel. Well, okay, so let me put it this way. Canadians listen to American podcasts all the time, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you actually have conversations with those that you serve to understand what it is they're listening to and what they're consuming, so that you make sure that you show up where they're going. Because it's a lot more work. Think about this. It's a lot more work to turn somebody's ship around and say, no, you need to go and listen to that show, even though it's not your habit and you've never done it before. But for me, just to get to know me, you're going to have to go listen to that show. When is that ever going to work? It's never going to work. On the other hand, if they're already listening to it, that show host is doing all the promo. They're running the ads. They're promoting on social. They're doing joint ventures with others to promote their podcast because their intention is to grow their market share, right? If they're doing all of that, then this is your opportunity to piggyback to go to where your ideal clients are already playing. So what time Thursday? Julie is asking. My next live, How to Be a Featured Expert, is at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. So 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday if you're watching this live. Eventually these will be recorded and then they'll be available forever after. But if you're actually here, then I can answer questions. I can customize the presentation and make it specific to you. And that's the real value of being here. The other thing you want to do is when you're here, I notice you. That's a good thing. And actually, that's a little tip. So I'm going to throw you one last tip before we go. The number one thing that podcasters want to know, because podcasters are human beings too, is they want to know that they're being listened to. So if you listen to a lot of podcasts from a particular podcaster, so for example, once you've made your list of 15 shows that you know would be the right fit for your business, I highly recommend that you get a podcast app. Most of them are free. Download a podcast app onto your phone and just binge listen to podcasts. You can pick one or two, and what that will do is it will get you a clear sense of their voice. You will be able to write a pitch that is so freaking custom where they're like, oh my God, this person really gets my show. They really understand what I stand for. When you can connect what you stand for to what they stand for, they will book you. That's how I got on John Lee Dumas's podcast. And so in our program, we actually have templates that actually make this very, very simple. Fill in the blank. In 15 minutes, we literally tell you exactly what to write where and how to frame it. But if you want to do this by yourself, I've now given you the map for how to do it. All right. So thank you very much for spending your time with me. This has been really, really helpful. Yes, exactly. So here we go. So here's another reason to show up live. Stephen has his own podcast, and he has this humongous audience of 14,000 military veterans. Okay, and he just organized a live with me. So he booked me on his show to introduce me to his audience. Now think about this. I get to speak to 14,000 people that I did not spend any money. I haven't run any ads to this audience. I haven't spent any money. I haven't spent any time nurturing this audience. I let Stephen do all the hard work. Thank you, Stephen. And I'm just going to show up and do what I do. I'm going to show up, I'm going to be me, and I'm going to explain to them how my expertise serves them and how they can put it to use. And I can tell you that a percentage of that audience is then going to become mine. They're going to jump on my list. They're going to want to follow me. They're going to get to know me better, and they're going to get on calls and buy my stuff. And that's going to allow me to serve them at a much deeper level. And that is exactly what I want for you. So another benefit is showing up live to these things. 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, which is the 15th of November, is the next live where I'm going to teach you how to be a featured expert in the press on big name blogs, on your favorite magazines, maybe even on television. And we have another one coming up where it's like how to get featured, how to turn your one-time TV opportunity into a regular column. How many of you would like to learn how to do that? Because we have our clients do this all the time. So we've actually honed it to a science. We have a whole process for it. So anyway, that's what I would like to bring to you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me now. If this was useful to you, please share it. That would help me out. It helps me get my message out to help more entrepreneurs, because I live the best life. And the reason I'm able to do this is because I went for my dream and I figured out, I was sucked at social. I didn't have money for ads. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff, but I invested in learning and I applied my own genius, which is tapping into other people's audiences, borrowing audiences that are active and engaged. And this is what helped me grow our company. And I think everybody deserves a shot at this. I think everybody deserves to live this kind of lit up life. And I want to teach you how to do it. So if you know somebody who could benefit from this, tag them in the comments, share it in groups that you're a member of. That would really help me out. I will notice this too. And when I notice you, I'm going to get to know you. And when I get to know you, I'm getting booked on podcasts and media all the freaking time. So this is a really good way to cultivate my regard. Do you see how that works? So you get to know podcasters, but you also get to know influencers. And when you get to know an influencer, typically they shop you around because they're like, oh my God, I just got off this podcast. How do I bring value to this podcaster? Let me introduce you to 3 other people who'd be an amazing guest. When you get a bump like this from somebody that the podcaster values, that's a quick way to get in the door. Does that make sense? So that's another little ninja tip. It's a tip for when you get booked where you can add value to the podcaster. And it's a tip for how to ride somebody else's coattails onto a podcast that you want to get booked on. Mwah. Thank you. That's it for me today. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.